Hello, I'm Elizabeth Macdonald. Welcome to this We're Not Done Yet conversation with Janet Stobie, who is a writer, has been a teacher, is a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a great grandmother, and oh, yes, is a retired United Church minister. Janet, for people involved in pastoral ministry, writing is part of the job. Writing sermons, writing prayers, writing reports. When did you first become aware that writing wasn't going to be just part of the job for you? When did writing become something different, something more in your life?
I think it was when I was preaching right at the very beginning of my ministry in my first pastoral charge, Bethany and Pontypool United Churches. The I was telling stories because I don't know about you, but I didn't want anybody falling asleep while I was preaching. And I know that storytelling is something that people pay attention to, they listen and they hang on to it, just as Jesus told stories. So I started becoming writing a little story instead of a sermon every once in a while, where I would become one of the characters. And this was back before that was fashionable. And I told the stories, and my congregations were just so pleased. They loved my stories, and they said to me, "You need to put those in a book because people besides us need to hear them." And so that was the beginning of my call to writing. And I went home and thought about that and prayed about that for a while and decided that, okay, that wasn't what I had planned at all. But sometimes God draws us down some strange, different journeys. And so I took the chance and I made up this little book and took it to Staples and had 100 copies made. Cost me $500. That was a leap of faith. And my goodness, they sold in 2 weeks. And I just said, okay, God, we're off and running. And so 9 books later, here I am.
Well, in addition to all of the sermons and prayers you've composed, you've written those short stories, you've written children's books, devotions, novels. Is there a genre of writing that you are more comfortable with, that you enjoy more?
Um, in the actual writing, it's more when I'm connected to God and I'm actually doing the writing, and uh, that it doesn't seem to matter what the genre is. It's when the words start to just flow from my fingers. I can't write to just I can't just sit down and say, all right, I'm going to write now. I'm going to write a story. I'm going to write a book. It doesn't work that way for me. I have to somehow I usually it's I wake up in the morning and God has given me a thought that I need to put on paper. So whether it's a blog or a short story or the beginning of a big project, that's my favorite time. Oh, I just love it. And my husband says I'm so much easier to live with when I am writing.
Well, you're talking about that connection with God. And I'm wondering over this past decade where you've been putting lots of energy into writing, what's happened to your experience of God? How's your relationship with God been changing as you've been writing all of these books and devotions and stories?
God is more present. Um, No, that's not true because God's always present. I am more aware of God's presence in my life, no matter what I'm doing or where I am. Um, yeah, at, I just, it's just grown. My faith has grown. It's deepened. It's just been a wonderful experience. Yeah, yeah.
Well, years ago, you discerned, and the United Church of Canada confirmed that God was calling you to ordination, was calling you to pastoral ministry. Would you say, as you look back over this past decade, Have you experienced a call to writing? Would you call it a call?
Oh my, yes, yes, yes. And I would say that the call to writing, even though I wasn't aware of it, came with my call to ministry.
Mm,
I've been doing a lot of thinking the last, because I just did a storytelling and faith um, public speaking thing and guest speaker engagement. And so I've been thinking about that. And one of the things that happened way back when long before I was ordained, actually, I was at a UCW camp in Quimilac.
mhm.
Lots of the people around here will know about the UCW camp in the fall. And I went, I hadn't planned on going, and I went. And one of the wonderful women there was leading Bible study. And um, I signed up for Bible study. And mostly because my friend signed up for Bible study, because I'd never done Bible study. I'd been part of the church, I'd been a member, I'd attended all my life. And, but I never actually picked up my Bible and read it or looked at it. And so that weekend, I learned that the Bible God speaks to us through the Bible. It's I won't give you the big long story, but it was just the most amazing thing. And I came home from that weekend wanting to tell people they needed to read their Bibles. They needed to go to Bible study. And when I first started to write, then I started to write with Bible stories, right? Making up the eyewitness accounts of Bible stories. So for me, that's kind of where the call to writing started as well. It was right there as with the call to ministry.
So it's almost as if God's call to you was a little bit like a braid. There was a strand that was pastoral ministry, there was a strand that was writing, and these have been woven together over the years with some of the time focusing more on one strand, and now at this stage of your life focusing more on that call to writing. It's always been part of a fuller call.
Yes, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Now, writing a book is just the beginning. Then, once the book is finished, you've done writing, you've put your pen down, or you've turned off the computer, then you've got to get it published. Then it's got to be promoted, and you want it to sell. What has that part of the process been like for you, Janet?
Well, it's been quite an interesting journey, and God and I have had a lot of conversation around that because personally, I would like my books to just kind of float out of my house and into people's hands. I I've told God for a long time that I would like him to sell them on the internet for me. And of course, that doesn't happen. You read about how people sell things on the internet so easily. Well, it's not easy. It is not easy. So the publishing part is interesting and fun. I chose not to go the traditional route and have seek a publisher, partly because I hate rejection, and you have to be rejected many many times. Most people, they send a piece of their writing out to 50, 100, 150 people before they ever actually get anybody that picks it up and says, oh yeah, I'll publish that. So I didn't, when I get it written, I want it out there. I don't want to wait. And if a publisher actually picks up your writing, then you've still got another year or more before it actually sees the light of day. So I do it myself. And I tried partner publishing, which was paying somebody from the internet a large amount of money to do some of the work for you. And I discovered that they didn't help you sell it, which was the part that was hard for me. So why pay them the money? So I do everything myself. I pay the editor. I have a professional editor, and And I pay for the book designer and like everything that way, and pay the printer. And so I do it entirely myself. And I don't mind doing that. I rather like that. That's good. And I really enjoy working with an editor. It's fun to have them look at your stuff. It's work, hard work. They don't just say, "Oh, that's wonderful." There's always improvement. But I don't particularly like sitting behind a table at a church sale trying to sell my stuff because yeah, it feels like you're trying to sell your stuff, and that's not easy. So and I've never had a lot of success on the internet, but that's just making an about turn now, and so that's good. That's a change. And so I always went around and spoke, did guest speaking engagements. Loved it. I love to get up in front and talk to people about God. That just suits my fancy. The problem with that is that COVID stopped all that.
And we're having to learn new ways to get the word out. Absolutely. Well, Janet, I think a lot of us who've been involved in ministry in one form or another, we can relate to you talking about how wonderful it is to be able to speak and to get up and to engage people. What often is not so wonderful is getting feedback. And I know that was a hard lesson for a lot of us in pastoral ministry. We had to learn early on, there might be a comment at the door at the end of the service that was a little hard to hear. You keep going out to all kinds of gatherings, sharing your books, talking about your books, speaking. And what's it been like as you've found yourself dealing with people's feedback? Have you found a way to deal with that? Because that's not easy either.
Well, I've been spoiled. I've worked hard at not having my head grow. Okay, because people have been wonderful. I'm very blessed. I think it certainly has affirmed writing as my ministry. Yesterday, I was at a UCW meeting, and a lady talked on for like 2 or 3 minutes about how wonderful dipping your toes was. So I haven't had a lot of criticism. Yeah, once in a while, now and then. And you know what? Everybody's different. God made us all different. It's a good thing. So some people like my books, enjoy them. Some people think my novel doesn't have any violence to speak of in it. So, it's not adventure in that way. And so, but that's okay.
Well, many of us read books and wish we could talk to the author, but the author might live in another part of the world. The author might not be alive anymore. And so it is a particular gift to be able to speak directly to an author. So I can imagine that when you open yourself, when you're out at events and willing to talk, that's an experience that lots of us long for, but don't always have the opportunity to speak to the writer after we've read something that has informed us or moved us or touched us in some way.
Well, it's an honor and a privilege for me too, to speak to the people who've been reading my stuff. Like that's a true blessing. And you're right, as a clergy person, you often get very little feedback on your Sunday mornings. I got the most feedback when I told my stories. You don't usually get a lot. I had a secretary back when I was at Bethany and Pontypool, and she would enter this lovely book that a friend gave me, that pastoral record book. And she would enter the title of the sermon that I preached, and she would put her own comment right beside it. But that was great.
Oh my gosh.
It was wonderful. I mean, she was my secretary, but she was pretty, she left it blank. She left it blank. You knew, well, I didn't touch her today.
Well, that's a practice that would be new for a lot of us. Now, Janet, you've written and published 9 books, and I understand that you're working on number 10 and you have the idea already for number 11. I'm not sure you're going to want to answer this question, but I can't resist asking you, do you have a favorite of all the books you've written? Or is it a little bit like asking a parent, who's your favorite child?
It is like asking a parent who's your favorite child, because it's the process of writing is really like giving birth. Depending on what you're doing, like my blogs, I get up in the morning and I write them. My husband goes through and tries to edit them, and up they go because we don't have time for that. But for a book, it's a process. It's a process of getting the idea down on paper, writing the story or whatever. It's sometimes a very long process. Like a novel takes a couple of years to, and you go back and you correct and you fix and you get it the best that you think it can possibly be, and then you take it to the editor and they start you all over again, and you go through it again and again, and when you finally get it out there, put money into it and everything, let me tell you, when that book arrives in my door, it's, yes, it is my baby. And so they're all pretty special. Some are more work than others, just as some kids are more work than others.
Yes.
Yes. And so I like to just sit down and write a story. So if I can do it quickly, I'd say that I'd rather do that than the novels. The novels are longer process. So writing the short stories are probably more fun.
Well, how and where can people get more information about all of these books that we've been talking about, Janet?
Well, they're on my website, www.janetstobie.com. That's about as easy as it gets, and I try for that. And you can go on. I have pictures of the covers. I have write-ups of the book. I have a little bit about the story of writing the book. I have a sample of each book. So that's all on the website. There's a little bit on the website about me. There's the topics that I speak on when I go out speaking. There's lots of information on the website, and there's a contact me button, and you can just click that and I'll get it. Or you can just send me a straight email, just info@janetstobie.com, and ask me any question you like and order a book.
And I have no doubt that after this conversation, you're going to be getting a few emails. Janet Stobie, thank you so much for joining us today.
It was fun. It was fun talking to you, Elizabeth. You're great. Thanks.